what drew me to Da Vinci was really the quality. So we were importing the Da Vinci brushes with Stephen, and he was so enthusiastic about them. And we're both retailers at this point, and he just told me, "I think these are the best brushes in the world." And he said the selection is like nothing I've ever seen, and that is true. We have the largest selection of brushes in the world, and so we have everything, oil painting, watercolor, or acrylic, but then a million other categories: gilding, sign painting, pinstriping. I could go on and on.
Welcome to the BoldBrush Show, where we believe that fortune favors the bold. Brush. My name is Laura Engelbert, and I'm your host. For those of you who are new to the podcast, we are a podcast that covers art marketing techniques and all sorts of business tips specifically to help artists learn to better sell their work. We interview artists at all stages of their careers, as well as others who are in careers tied to the art world in order to hear their advice and insights. We're starting off Season 5 with an exciting collaboration with Da Vinci brushes. Our guest today is Gregory Daniels, their North American importer. On this episode, Gregory tells us all about the history of Da Vinci as well as his own personal history growing up as part of a legacy of art material suppliers. He also talks about Da Vinci's unyielding commitment to quality and ecology, as well as how the founder of Da Vinci, Hansfried Defet, not only succeeded to attain his goal of making the best brushes in the world, but also made advances in technology to create a synthetic fiber that is virtually impossible to knock off. This then allowed the company to produce the highest quality vegan brushes alongside their meticulously crafted natural hair brushes. We also talk about what sets Da Vinci apart from other brush companies, and that is their dedication to excellence and not cutting corners, or in this case, hair, for the sake of profit. Gregory also tells us all about the amazing artisans at Da Vinci who make every single brush by hand and who maintain a high level of quality control to ensure that every brush they make is a work of art in itself. Whether you're a hobbyist or a professional artist, these brushes truly are the best in the world. This is part 1 of a 2-part series. In this episode, we will be focusing mostly on oil painting brushes, both natural bristle as well as vegan and synthetic brushes. If you're listening to this episode, I highly recommend checking out the video version at boldbrushshow.com so you can see exclusive clips of the factory as well as brush demonstrations. And finally, we also want to announce that Da Vinci Brushes and BoldBrush have teamed up to create paintbrush sets for our listeners. Simply visit brushoffer.com/collections/BoldBrush so you can check out these amazing exclusive sets while you listen to the episode. And now, on with the show. Welcome, Gregory, to the BoldBrush Show. How are you today?
I'm fine. Thanks, Laura, for having me. I'm very happy to be here.
Yes, and I'm so excited to have you on because I'm a huge fan of Da Vinci brushes. I started using them when I was a student, still studying in Italy, and I can tell you that I still have the same brushes, and they're basically in the same exact shape that I bought them in, which I am excited to talk about why, because we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But before we begin, do you mind giving us a little background about Da Vinci and their history?
Sure, yes. Well, Da Vinci is a factory, brush factory in Nuremberg, Germany. And Nuremberg is kind of interesting in the art supply business because you have a lot of factories there for pencils and brushes. It was an ancient crossroads, a trading center, if you will. So, you have some companies, Faber-Castell, Stabilo, and a lot of other pencil companies, as well as Da Vinci, all, very, very nearby each other. So Da Vinci started in about 1890, and the same family still owns the factory and is making the brushes. So how are we unique? We're unique in that we make every brush from start to finish, from the raw material to the finished product. And the family is called the Defet family. And like a lot of things in Germany in World War II, the factory was completely destroyed. Then in 1946, Hansfried Defet, who we all refer to as Mr. Defet, took over as a 17-year-old with his mother, and they slowly rebuilt the factory. And he just died a few years ago, and he was 90 years old. We had an incredible 90th birthday for him in Salzburg.
Oh.
And people came from all over the world that had been working with him for gosh, I guess he was in the brush trade, over 70 years. So he was a great innovator in brush making, both in natural hair brushes and in synthetic brush making, which we'll get into. But his whole goal was to make the highest quality brush that was built to last and be the specialist for specialists. So really a factory focused on making brushes for artists, quality over quantity, and to make the best brushes possible. And that was his kind of driving force for over 70 years.
That's incredible. And I think that's also very commendable too, because I think these days it can be so challenging for artists to find high quality anything. I mean, especially brushes, which is obviously it's like the thing we use the most when we paint, right? So
Right.
I've had like, the cheap, really cheap brushes that like will leave little strands in my painting, which is so crappy. So it's really wonderful to know that there are companies out there who really care and they like my Da Vinci brushes, they don't do that ever. Like they don't like leave little strands, which I love. So do you mind telling us a little bit about your background and how you got started with Da Vinci brushes?
What drew me to Da Vinci was really the quality. My family, we had an art supply store in Los Angeles for over 50 years. We started my grandfather started in Chelsea in 1924 in Manhattan, and he worked for a company called DeVoe and Reynolds. And they
Mm,
were the largest manufacturer of art supplies, possibly in the world then. They had a huge factory in Chicago, huge factory in New York. They started in 1755, so the company was actually older than America. And so he started working for them, and they immediately sent him out because he had just graduated from college and sent him all over the United States and Canada, Mexico, Cuba, and he just traveled by train all over North America, really, selling this huge catalog of art supplies. So that's how we got started. So we had our store for 1941 to 1996, and in 1996, we sold the business, and we had been importing the brushes directly. Our store was called H.G. Daniels Company in Los Angeles, and we had been importing them with a very famous art supply store, New York Central Art Supply in Manhattan, who started in 1905 and was run by the Steinberg family. Most notably, in the last generation, Steven Steinberg, who was a very famous figure in the art supply industry and with artists. So we were importing the Da Vinci brushes with Steven, and he was so enthusiastic about them. And we're both retailers at this point, and he just told me, "I think these are the best brushes in the world." And he said the selection is like nothing I've ever seen, and that is true. We have the largest selection of brushes in the world, and so we have everything, oil painting, watercolor, or acrylic, but then a million other categories: gilding, sign painting, pinstriping. I could go on and on. It's we have an enormous catalog. So, um,
mhm.
and we do have a brand new catalog, print catalog. You can also, go on the Da Vinci site, which is davinci-defet, defet.com, and download the new catalog. I think it's under the media tab. But we also have a physically beautifully printed it's a catalog, and it's like an encyclopedia of brushes. So if there are any painters out there in the US or Canada that want to get a hold of one of those, just email me, Greg at gregdaniels.com, and we can send one out, because I think it's wonderful to have a print catalog. And it has a front section on everything you could want to know about brushes, brush making, the manufacturing, the hairs, the synthetic hairs, how we put the brushes together, and then the sections of brushes. So it's really like a foundation class for brushes. So I encourage anybody listening to contact us, and we'll get you out a catalog.
Awesome. Yeah, and we'll also include those links in the show notes. So can you tell us about the factory? Because I know the factory, the Da Vinci factory, is really particular and it has a very unique way in which it's been put together and its location. Do you mind telling us more about it?
Yeah, it's really unique. I mean, we had an old post World War II factory. Um, with the Defet family also owned an art gallery that they started in 1958. So they were also representing artists at art shows and showing artists at their own gallery. And their factory's full of art that they've collected over the years. So that original factory is now a cultural center. It's got two large galleries. It's got, I think, about 30 artist studios where artists can do a residency there and get a free studio for free for a certain period of time. And there's just a lot of activity there. So instead of selling the old building, they made it into gallery space and studio space for artists. So in 2006, we built a brand new factory from the ground up. And the goal was to make the first eco-friendly, completely green brush factory, non-polluting. So that's what they did. They built a modern brush factory, made the old brush factory a cultural center. And then in 2013, they built a second brush factory. So now there are two separate factories. One is for all the natural hair brush making by hand. And some synthetic brushes that are made by hand are also done there. And then we have the second factory where we're making synthetic brushes, some innovations we've made by machine with, so it's kind of like half machine, half by hand. But it allowed us to make better student brushes at a lower price for artists who are just starting out. We found that, a lot of artist brushes that are for beginners are just weren't very good quality, and it might have turned people off to painting when they started because the brushes just weren't very good, frankly.
Mm.
So the goal has been to build the highest quality brush. All of our handles are from sustainable forestry in Europe, mainly in Lithuania, Estonia, Latvia. And then the handles are shaped for us in northern Italy by a gentleman we've worked with for a family, I should say, for decades and decades. So we're really trying to make every brush, as well as we can. And we'll talk about more about the specific oil brushes and watercolor brushes later, and all the other things. But that's been the goal. And building these two new factories has been incredible because, it really. I've been very impressed with the investment they've made into sustainability and making non-polluting factory, and it's makes me proud to work with them. They also have these incredible machines for brush making. They have a machine shop in the basement of one of the factories. So all the machines we have for brush making, we make the machines. So none of the machines we have been purchased. And that makes some of the things we can do with blending synthetic hair and making brush heads very innovative that no other manufacturer has. And the biggest, I think the biggest point is that, the factory is owned by the Defet family still, and the Meyer family, who's been working in the factory for over 30 years. So they're the co-owners. And we haven't been bought or sold. And what we've seen in the art supply business that's unfortunate is starting in about 1982, we've had just 40 years of consolidation. So before that, brands would be competing against each other, and they'd be trying to make the best brush possible, or the best oil paint possible, or the best whatever canvas. So there was a sense of pride. You had a lot of family-owned businesses, kind of artisanal businesses, and everybody making things the best they could. And when smaller companies started being bought up and bought up and bought up, obviously what happens is the quality kind of starts going down. Maybe they're not manufacturing the brushes where they used to be. And, as you get further and further down the line, you have kind of people looking at brushes on spreadsheets and saying, oh, we're not selling enough of this, and let's eliminate this line and let's eliminate that. And it's not really with the artist in mind. So we've never done that. But that's the way our industry has changed. We're one of the last independently owned manufacturers of art supplies that aren't under kind of a larger umbrella. And, generally when you walk into an art supply store, you have a lot of brush brands. And most of those brush brands are manufactured in India by one manufacturer in particular. China, Sri Lanka, some in Korea. So you have a lot of brands where they're not making any brushes, and they're just choosing different handle colors, and the name is being stamped on the brush. Just as kind of so these are just kind of marketing companies more than they are brush makers. And so, I think when you're buying a brush as an artist and you want it to last and you want the quality to be there, think about that. Like, is this company actually making this item? Because generally, the companies that are making their own materials, these are much higher quality. The artist is going to have a better experience, and it's better to support this kind of family business where people are really putting generations into the know-how of how to make a great brush. I mean, I think one of the things we talked about previously, Laura, was at Da Vinci you have 40 or 50 brush makers. The head brush maker is a woman, and we have specialists for every type of brush. So the small sizes for detail or miniature painting, you have women that are just very, good at making these brushes. Maybe they have smaller hands, they're just or the ability to do this. Then we have a couple gentlemen that just specialize in filberts for oil painting, because making a filbert is the hardest shape to get everything by hand, the right lengths, um, and to taper it correctly. This is all achieved by hand in our factory. So the shape you see, there are no scissors is ever used to cut a brush into shape. All that is achieved by hand, so that you have, for hog bristle, you have split ends, just like in our hair, which is called flags, and that's what holds on to and distributes the paint correctly. And so generally, the brush makers, it's generations in the family. It's a real family trade. It takes 3 years to be a brush maker, to join the guild of brush makers, and to qualify to become a master brush maker at Da Vinci. So, if you just pick up and move a factory somewhere because it's been bought, you just can't find brush makers growing on trees. I mean,
Yeah.
generally at Da Vinci, you'll see the team of brush makers, and maybe the uncle is over there, and maybe their grandparents or their parents or a cousin have also been brush makers at Da Vinci. It's a real, it's a trade that goes through generations. Families take great pride in it. It's a well-paid job, and it's really specialized. So it's hard to do it well. And if you have this kind of, you know, continuity in the brush makers, the results are much better.
I 100% agree. And I love that, it feels like it's a big company and technically it is, but it also has that feeling of the artisanal like group of people who really care, who really want to do the best job that they can, making these brushes. And I think that's really what sets Da Vinci apart because there's so few companies that can really boast that amount of history in every brush that they make. It's like it's also kind of mind bending to think like, oh, my brushes were made by this person. Maybe I have older Da Vinci brushes that were probably made by that person's grandfather. That's so freaking cool. The other awesome thing is like if my children become painters, they would probably be able to use my same brushes because Da Vinci brushes they last so long. Like I personally, I wanna buy more because I love them, but also I love that the ones that I already have, I can trust. I can know that they're gonna last longer as I take care of them than the amount of time that I'll be alive, which is really great.
Well, yeah, I mean, the brush has kind of a certain architecture, and like I said, we use only these beautiful handles that we make sure are balanced correctly. We don't have any lightweight handles that aren't properly balanced, and the ferrules we use, which is what connects the brush head to the handle. We generally use just nickel-plated brass, some gold-plated brass, and a few series we use silver uh, ferrules. So these are like the best money can buy. The other thing we do with natural hair is we set the hair deeper below the ferrule, so the invisible part below the ferrule that you can't see, and that allows by setting it deeper, it allows the brush to have more flexibility, yet retain kind of a stiffness too, and also maintain its shape over time. And that really allows the brush to last longer. I mean, a way to, if you're a corporation and you're making a brush, if you don't set the hair or the synthetic deeply in the ferrule, maybe you can save 20 or 30%, but the brush is going to be flimsy and it's not going to last very long or retain its shape. So there are a
Mhm.
lot of ways to kind of cheat, to be more profitable. But we just never do that. I mean, one of the things that really drew me to the company was I first went there in 1997 for a visit, and I was had written a proposal to be the North American importer, and I was just blown away by all the art in the factory, the original art. I mean, it was just everywhere. And I realized as I got to meet the people, everybody that worked there were art lovers. And as I got to know them better, it's a lot of kind of art, music, and literature people,
Oh,
maybe people in that love the humanities that are running this company. And that's a reflection of the people Mr. Defet hired. Yes, we have to be business people as well. But I generally saw that there was a love of art, the materials, uh, they're always developing new things, and that really, really attracted me to the company. I hadn't really seen that um, with the other companies I was interviewing with. So I became the sole distributor of a North American importer in 2001, and I began working with them in 1998. So I guess this is my 25th year with them,
wow.
and I'm working with the same people. Of course, some younger people have come in, but it's been just kind of one vision of quality and just working hard. And when I started, they were in 7 or 8 countries, and that was in 1998. And now they're in 95 countries. So it's been a huge amount of growth. And just by kind of focusing on quality and really, I think the message that Mr. Defet started with post 1940s, we've just kind of stuck to that. And his wife, Mrs. Defet, was an artist, a painter, and a great patron of the arts as well. And she was very inspiring. So their vision, kind of, and the people they've hired, um, has made this kind of a wonderful company to work with, and I think very unique. And they've done a great job of bringing younger people up through the company. I mean, currently, Herman Myers, our CEO, and Herman started when he was 27, and he's been there over 30 years, um, and now his son Tobias is a co-CEO, and Julian Defet from the Defet family, and they're both in there. I think Tobias is about 30, and Julian's maybe in his 30s. So we have a great succession plan. We have like younger people in the company that are co-CEOs, and so it's really it's been a pleasure to work with them. And my background was, I grew up in Los Angeles, and we had this art supply store for decades and decades. And at the time, from like I'd say 1941 till late 80s, we were the largest art supply store in terms of sales in the United States. So we also had a store in San Diego, and then Pearl Paint surpassed us at some point in the 80s, becoming a bigger retailer. But so when I was a teenager, I started working there. I was about 8 or 9,
Oh.
as had my father, and it was a very urban store. It was in downtown LA, and we had the Chenard Art Institute, which is a very famous art school in American history, if you Google it, which Disney later bought and turned into Cal Arts in Valencia. And
Mm.
we had Art Center, and which is now in Pasadena, and we had the Otis Art School, Otis Parsons. And so I every summer was driving the delivery truck. We had 3 delivery trucks that would go out full of art materials in every direction, and I loved this job. And so I was, a teenager going into all these painter studios, very famous painters, unknown painters, aspiring painters, and I was a musician. I was a bass player and played in a lot of kind of the early 80s kind of punk rock bands, and then went into soul jazz bands, And so, I was right up my alley. I was just visiting and meeting all these painters and kind of, really developed a love of painting. And which I found with the Da Vinci team, half the time we're talking about which opening is where and are we going to go see it and talking about
Mhm.
galleries and museums. So, it was very exciting to land in a place where I found like-minded people, all who had great, product knowledge that was just incredible. Um, and I loved in the store selling oil paint, so I had studied the differences between every brand of oil paint, and watercolor paints and how they were all different. And so, so my background, I don't know, somehow led me to this wonderful company, and I became the North American importer. So.
That's awesome. And actually, before we touch more on the brushes, how can people contact you to sell Da Vinci brushes? Say, for example, if they have a store, like an art store, and they're listening to this podcast, how can they, sell?
Yeah, that's a very good question. My company is called Gregory Daniels Fine Arts, and our customers are in the U.S., Canada, and just Gregory Daniels Fine Arts, Greg at gregdaniels.com. Our phone number is 323-620-5507 for anybody who wants to call. But yeah, you can just contact me directly and we can set up a wholesale account for you. Um, and thank you for asking that because that's important information.
Yes, yes, it is.
Yeah.
Especially because I've also noticed, when I go into art stores, they have such a wide range of brushes. And sometimes I find it kind of weird when like I walk in and I don't see the specific brushes that I want, or like it's all just like these big confusing like signs and all of these different brushes that in the end to me just all look the same. So if I'm looking for like Da
Yeah.
Vinci brushes, it can be like I'm always like looking like, okay, where's the little Da Vinci sign, you know?
Yeah, that's very true. Because really there are just two or three of us left. I'm not going to name the other companies, but that are making all the brushes,
Mhm,
in our own factories in whatever home country they're in Europe. Um, yeah, you do have. I mean, I often walk into an art supply store and you may see like a wall of brushes, and you may see, three white synthetic brushes from different brands, and it's basically the same fiber and
mhm,
with a different color handle. It's the same brush. So you see so much duplication, or you see, one brand may have three lines of synthetic hog bristle, but then you look in the store and they don't have any, they don't have a Kolinsky oil brush, or they don't have, we make a very unique black sable brush for oil painting. So there can be like a huge selection, but it can be a lot of duplication where they're missing key traditional brushes and modern synthetics that we make that are different. And so that's what we try to do. I mean, we really kind of work differently in that a lot of the corporate brands have these huge displays and they don't have that
mhm,
many brushes. They can be 18 inches wide, and we our brush racks are, like 8 inches wide or 11 inches wide, and that's to help the retailer have a kind of more of a selection in a smaller space.
mhm.
So, I guess we're doing a little contrarian thinking on that, the way we operate. But we want to give the retailer a great selection of a bunch of unique brushes in a very small space. Um, so yeah, we're very different that way from most of the brush brands in the artist supply industry.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think I appreciate that a lot because that makes it so much easier to, like, go into an art store and actually find the Da Vinci brushes instead of, like, getting distracted by, like, that big ass sign that has, like, a bunch of nothing on it, it's, like, maybe, like, a really goofy, like, painting or something and then, like, all the writing. I don't even look at that. I'm touching all the brushes and I'm like, "Why do they all feel the same?" Um, but actually, I think now is a really
Yeah,
good
there's
moment. Huh? You can
no,
you
go
can
ahead, go
continue.
ahead.
No, you can continue.
Well, yes, there is a lot of duplication of
Mhm.
we try to make, with our natural hair brushes, I mean, we try to use only the best, like when you're buying natural hair, whether it's hog bristle or Kolinsky sable or black sable or ox hair, whatever kind of material you're using, you can buy these in different quality levels. Um, so we generally, with all of our brushes, generally always buy the highest quality we can. And we have kind of ancient sources for this material that Mr. Defet developed over, you know, 50 years, 60 years. Um, so we always try to buy the best, and then maybe sometimes we'll buy the second quality as well, so that we can make an alternative for artists, um, with a brush that's a little less expensive. So let's say we have, our Maestro Kolinsky watercolor brushes, which are our top of the line brushes. We also buy then one called the Harbin Kolinsky, which is about 40% less, um, so that the artist can have an alternative. Maybe they want to buy a size 10 round. Well, in the Maestro, it's pretty expensive, but if you buy the Harbin size 10, it could be 40% less in a
Mhm.
store. So that's kind of our guiding philosophy. We're always buying the best that we can, and we dress the hair ourselves. So most brush manufacturers buy the hair in a bundle,
Mm.
um, from a middleman. So we actually, will buy the tails, and for making sable and squirrel brushes, we'll buy the ears because it grows very long out of the ox hair ears, and then we clean and dress the hair ourselves in the factory, so we know what quality we're getting, and we have quality control, and we also have a very expensive digital microscope that we can examine, take out all the broken hairs in the natural hair of brush making. Now, I should say that no animals are, to my knowledge, are killed for brush making. It's a byproduct industry. So the brush makers, it's not a big enough industry. We get the leftover parts
Mhm.
generally. So we get the tail to make, sable and squirrel brushes. The hog bristle usually comes from the back of the hog. And so that's kind of, just to be upfront and honest about that. That's
Mhm.
that's that's how it works. But in this, starting in the 1970s, Mr. Defet really put his attention on synthetic brush making, and that's a whole another chapter,
Mhm.
where he wanted to make the best synthetic brushes in the world. And because up until the 80s, this synthetic brush making was just kind of one strand of nylon, one thickness. They weren't great. You'd go into an art supply store and it might just say, I remember this as a teenager. It was and it would just say for oil, acrylic, and watercolor, and there'd be no information. And the brushes just weren't very good.
Mhm.
So Mr. Defet Da Vinci started experimenting, making multi-diameter synthetics. That was the first thing. So 3 and 5 diameters of thickness. So you'd have 3 or 5 different thicknesses of nylon or whatever the material was, Taclon or some kind of synthetic material. And he started kind of what he said would spinning them together, in that the thickest would be on the outside and the thinnest would be on the inside. And by doing this, it kind of started this capillary motion where water or paint was coming up and being held into the brush and then being distributed more evenly. And he started shaping brushes specifically for synthetic brush making. So sometimes if you make a synthetic brush and you try to shape it just like the oil painting brush or the watercolor brush, natural hair, you have to make different allowances for the thicknesses, the shaping, so it performs better as a synthetic brush. So we have like 3 lines. These were the first ones. We have the Nova, which comes in a short and long handle, and this was the first brush we did with 3 diameters synthetic. It's still all over the world, the Nova. It's got a green handle. It's a golden synthetic, and it's one of our most, affordable brushes. I know you use that brush. You told me you bought some in Italy years and years ago from the
Yes,
Zecchi
I
store
have
in
them.
Florence.
Oh, yes. I bought them. I bought a whole set. Like, these are filberts, and
Mhm.
they have lasted. God, I've been using them for like 5 years, and the shape, it's still nice and springy, which, oh, it's so nice. I don't get that with other brushes, and they've maintained their shape so well too, which I recommend these also. I've personally used them, and I think they're some of the best for anyone who's starting out. And I
Yeah,
like
they're
that
a
they're
great.
they're a good price.
Yeah, yeah, they
Yeah.
are. And so Nova was the first one, and then we kind of took the multi-diameter synthetic brush making manufacturing a bit further, with a short handle brush called Cosmotop Spin for watercolor. And
Mm.
that's still my best selling brush in the United States, 5 diameters, and it really holds a lot of water. And if you haven't used it and you've used other synthetics, please try this brush. And then the other 5 diameter construction was the top acryl brush, and that
Mm.
was aimed more at acrylic and oil painters. And this brush comes from size 1 up to size 50, and this is a lot. You'll find this a lot in the Da Vinci range. We make the smallest sizes all the way up to huge sizes, so it's a huge range of sizes, and that's just been developed by artist requests over the years. So the top acryl is really a brush that can move a lot of paint for both oil and acrylic painters. For acrylic painters, because of the construction, it also, when you mix with water, holds a ton of paint and water and distributes it evenly, and you can cover a lot of ground with it. And for both of those, we also make what's called Mottler brushes, which is a specialty of ours, which is kind of a flat wash or varnish brush. And the flat wash brush, the Series 5080 for watercolor, is one of our most popular brushes in the Cosmotop Spin line. And the Series 5040 is the top acryl version. And these they'll leave just completely smooth strokes. We have violin varnishers that use them. If you want no strokes, these are great brushes for you. And we took that then another step further. We came out with 2 new lines that were 5 diameter synthetics, but we developed a crimped fiber. So if you look at it under a microscope, it's a wavy fiber. So we made these wavy fiber brushes, which nobody else had ever done before. And the watercolor version is called the Casaneo. This brush has been tremendously popular all over the world. Watercolor, gouache artists, illustration, and the whole urban sketching movement, who we supported right from the beginning. And they use this brush like crazy. And if you'd ever told me 10 years ago that a quill brush, the shape of a quill brush, would be my #1 bestseller, I would have said there's no way that will ever happen. But it has. And so we make a tremendous expanded line of quill brushes for watercolors, both in Kolinsky, traditional petite gris squirrel, Cosmotop Spin, and the Casaneo. And the crimped fiber construction kind of took the whole thing a step further. And I also think that, going back to the brush makers, we have 3 or 4 women that make the quill brushes. It's a very difficult, traditional, old-fashioned shape to make. It's got more belly. It comes to a sharper point, but then to twist the copper wire properly, it's a very difficult brush to make. And so we have some real specialized women that make this brush, the quills in particular, and that's all they do is make quills. So if you haven't tried any of the Da Vinci quills and you're working in water media, fluid acrylic, please try them.
Mhm.
And then we made another brush called the Grigio for oil painters. That is our newest kind of crimped fiber synthetic brush. Really just, I mean, acrylic painters are using it too, but really just aimed at oil painters. And we've had a tremendous success with it. It's kind of like, maybe we started 8 years ago, 10 years ago, but it's kind of slowly and slowly and slowly, as oil painters use it, uh, they found it's the best synthetic oil painting brush in the market. And when we made these brushes, we didn't want to make, with Casaneo, we didn't want to make a faux squirrel brush, or with Grigio, we didn't want to make a synthetic mongoose brush, because all the other manufacturers had these categorization of brushes, but generally they're just buying the same fiber from the same place, and the brushes are kind of all the same, and that's fine. But we took much longer to develop these brushes because we wanted to develop this new technology with the fibers and the way we blend them, the tapering, the different lengths, the different thicknesses, crimped fiber. So we don't call them, faux squirrel or synthetic mongoose for that reason, because we think they're really different. We think our synthetic brushes are very unique. This year we came out with another one called the Colineo, and that's something we've worked on for 5 years. It's synthetic Kolinsky brush for watercolorists, and oil painters will be using it in small sizes too for detail. And with this, we mixed straight fibers and crimped fibers, and again did the 5 diameters. And this is kind of, something Da Vinci developed, a way to do this, to blend these fibers that I we have a big trade show at Frankfurt every year. People come from all over the world, and I've had other brush manufacturers come to me and they've said, we haven't been able to knock off those brushes.
Oh, wow.
We haven't been able to knock off the multi. And we're like, well, that's good. So, we definitely have some trade secrets in how we make them and how we kind of create a base at the bottom of synthetic brushes so they have more of a foundation. But that's something that's kind of a secret as well. It's been amazing. It's been amazing. We have really have something different and unique. And obviously I'm a little biased, but I think that I don't think anybody else has made these strides in synthetic brush making. It was really Mr. Defet started spearheading the project kind of in the 70s and then the 80s, and we've just kept progressing. And we've even made a line of brushes for students and people on a lower budget called the eco student lines. So these are still very good lines, still made um, you know with all the ecological things I've talked about, and we make them all in the factory. And these are like the Da Vinci Junior, the Da Vinci Fit, the Forte Basic. We have a long-handled line called the College. So these are great lines if you're just getting started and you really don't want to spend a lot of money, but maybe you don't want to buy a brush that's not that's not great, because like I said, we found that if you buy a very cheap brush, who knows where it's made. A lot of times artists use it, they're just beginning, they're just taking their first class, and they don't get very good results from the brush. And that's what turns people off from keeping going and pursuing their painting, um,
Mhm.
for their pleasure, for perhaps a future career, or just being an aspiring weekend painter. We still want them to start with good brushes, even if they're on a low budget or they're a student.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's
Yeah.
great, because, like, personally, as an artist, when I first started using oil paint, I think it was maybe, like, 16, and I remember using these super cheap brushes, and oil painting is already really, really difficult, but, like, I didn't understand how hard it could be, how much harder it could be with the wrong brushes. Um, so eventually I did obviously invest in better brushes. So actually some of my first brushes were Da Vinci brushes. And I'm so grateful that for the price you get such great quality. And I love that the ethics, they go beyond just like, yes, it's a great brush. It's like, no, this is a great brush with a deep history and with deep loving care that's been put in every single strand of hair, which that's incredible. My hat's off
Yeah,
to
really,
the Da Vinci
the
team.
ethical manufacturing really, really appealed to me when I started with them, um, and their love of art and for artists, and that they had their gallery and they were, showing artists. I think they started in 1958, their gallery, so
Mm,
it's been going now for 60 plus years,
yeah.
and it's incredible.
At BoldBrush, we inspire artists to inspire the world because creating art creates magic, and the world is currently in desperate need of magic. BoldBrush provides artists with free art marketing, creativity, and business ideas and information. This show is an example. We also offer written resources, articles, and a free monthly art contest open to all visual artists. We believe that fortune favors the bold brush. And if you believe that too, sign up completely free at boldbrushshow.com. That's BoldBrush show.com. The Bold Brush Show is sponsored by Faso. Now more than ever, it's crucial to have a website when you're an artist, especially if you want to be a professional in your career. Thankfully, with our special link, faso.com/podcast, you can make that come true and also get over 50% off your first year on your artist website. Yes, that's basically the price of 12 lattes in 1 year, which I think is a really great deal considering that you get sleek and beautiful website templates that are also mobile friendly, e commerce, print on demand in certain countries, as well as access to our marketing center that has our brand new art marketing calendar. And the art marketing calendar is something that you won't get with our competitor. The art marketing calendar gives you day by day, step by step guides on what you should be doing today, right now, in order to get your artwork out there and seen by the right eyes so that you can make more sales this year. So, if you want to change your life and actually meet your sales goal this year, then start now by going to our special link, faso.com/podcast. That's FASO.com/podcast. So, now that we know a little bit more about, the control, like the hair control, because I know you guys, like you said, you have a microscope and you actually look to see that the hairs are all perfect. I think that's a great moment to talk about the natural bristle oil brushes, which as an oil painter, I am so curious. You guys have such beautiful lines brushes. But tell us about first, like the best, absolute best ones.
Well, we make a huge range of natural hair brushes. So I'll start there. I mean, first we have the Kolinsky oil brushes, which are, all hand shaped. We're using only the best quality, Kolinsky sable. And of course, the oil brushes are shaped completely differently than the watercolor brushes, because the watercolor, you want the big belly to hold the water. And with the oil painting brushes, you know, you each brush has to be shaped particularly just for oil brushes. And so here we make, classic shapes. We make a round, we make a bright, we make a filbert. We also make a flat, which not many people do.
Mm,
And these are just referred to as our Kolinsky oil brushes. They have maroon handles, and these for detail work and holding an edge, holding a point, um, anything you want to do detail wise. Um, these are excellent, excellent brushes. And, we make them all from size 00 up to 30. So it's a huge range of sizes. And I think most manufacturers don't make anything above a size 16. So we have, you know, uh, very large sizes as well, which we sell to quite a few well-known artists in the large filberts, especially. Uh, um, so that's number one. We then make a brush called the black sable brush, and this is very unique to us. Um, it's a bit thicker, more rugged than Kolinsky sable. It's not as expensive, so you can get bigger sizes. It's a little thicker in the if you turn the brush sideways and you kind of pinch the belly of the flat or the filbert, same with Kolinsky, and you feel there's that body there. That's an important way to kind of, is this a good brush? You look at it straight on, but then if you turn it sideways and kind of grab it there, you can see, does this have the proper body? So I have all these old catalogs from my grandfather from the 1920s and 30s, and from DeVoe and Reynolds, where he worked, and they all had these black sable brushes in there. So when I started with Da Vinci, I said, "Oh, you make black sable brushes?" And they said, "Oh yeah, they're very popular with um, portrait painters, blending out hog bristle strokes, blending on the palette, but just as an all-around oil painting brush. It gives you a brush stroke that feels like hog bristle, but it doesn't mark the paint layers as significantly as hog bristle. And also sometimes people have used a hog bristle, they'll use the black sable to blend out some of the strokes if they want to, if they're doing something more realism or a portrait painting. So this is a very unique brush test, and we use a different hair. I mean, I kind of revived the popularity of this brush in the 2000s, and a lot of other manufacturers started making it. Um, Winsor Newton in particular made one called the Eclipse, but they used a much softer hair. It was like almost a different hair, and they called it the black sable, and it was too soft for oil painting, and they ended up discontinuing it. So even though it was also called black sable, it was completely different from ours. We use a higher quality hair, and to my knowledge, we're the only manufacturer making this brush in this way. This brush comes round and bright and filbert, and it also comes up to size 30 in all of those. Mr. Defet used to always say the filbert number 12, series 1845, size 12, he thought was the most stable brush and unique, one of the greatest oil painting brushes we made in the whole range. Um, so it kind of lies in between the Kolinsky sable brush, you get some of the benefits of that, and the classic hog bristle brush. You know, where you're seeing all the strokes. Of course, the classic hog bristle examples are, Van Gogh is number one. You see all the strokes in those paintings. Lucian Freud, in the figurative work. I mean, Lucian Freud is so interesting because in his early work, like the painting with his first wife holding the cat that's so famous, and you see all the detail of her hair and her features, and that all this early work was painted with sable brushes, both round short handle brushes and oil sable brushes. And then he made this huge career shift in the, I guess, I don't quote me on this, but I think it was around 1960, maybe a little bit later, but where he became the Lucian Freud that we more know, with the giant nudes,
Mhm.
um, and the figurative painting. And this is all work with hog bristle. And one of my favorite films about an artist the last 20 years was that you can get on DVD. It's David Hockney, A Bigger Picture. And this
Mm.
is where David Hockney went back to his the English countryside where he grew up, and I think he had just turned 70, and did these giant canvases, or hundreds of canvases that he pieced together into giant paintings. And I like this work of David Hockney post 70 years old more than any of his earlier work. And what's interesting about this video is you can see all the brushes he's using, and huge amount of brushes, and generally all hog bristle. We make a line of very traditional hog bristle brushes called the Maestro, with the blonde handle. And these, to my knowledge, are the last hand interlocked hog bristle brushes that anybody makes in the world. And so it's a whole thing where you have to set the curve of the natural bristle together and tie it. It's all done by hand. Um, and so this is a very specialized line. And I noticed that, he uses a lot of those brushes in the video, especially in
Mm.
filberts, in big filberts. And that's our Maestro hog bristle line. Um, what we sell more in America and in Europe really is the Maestro 2. So this line is made with exactly the same hog bristle quality wise. It's just we double boil it, and then it's heat set to interlock. So it's we can make the brush. It's not quite as so much hand tying and hand done. So it's the same quality of bristle. It just makes it more affordable, and for artists. And this is it's a very famous brush from us. It's got a black and red handle, beautiful handle called the Maestro 2. And this comes in many shapes. It comes round, bright, flat, short filbert, long filbert. Um, and we make a scenic painting brush with it, kind of an old-fashioned scenic painting brush. And I'm trying to think what about other shapes. There are a few other shapes. And then we make a fresco round, and we also make a giant range of mottlers with this. So you might see these brushes and think, well, that looks like a chip brush from a hardware store, but it's actually the same quality of hog bristle in flat brushes that you can buy in a mottler from 20 millimeters, just under 1 inch, 3/4 of an inch, all the way up to 500 millimeters, which would be 20 inches. So I mean, literally from this big to this big, and we do that with most of our mottlers. And so these are just beautiful, huge brushes, and they're very unique. There's a Los Angeles artist named Alison Van Pelt that uses these huge Series 500s. You can see her work online, and but we sell a lot of the large mottlers, and this is not business where we make a lot of money. It's just that we want to provide artists with these huge brushes and these crazy requests we get. We have a lot of very famous artists that use these two lines of hog bristle brush, and that's all they use due to the kind of quality. Then we also make in natural hair brushes a whole line of ox hair brushes called Pelo de Blue. This is softer hair. Sometimes a lot of acrylic painters actually use this too, because they can kind of drag a lot of paint across the canvas. And these brushes are very, very popular in Italy. It's a very traditional technique, and that's where we sell the most of them for certain. but we do have them, as well in America, and we have kind of a niche market for people who use this softer hair brush for oil painting. And then lastly, we have badger hair brushes for oil painting. And we make, I think, the largest line of badger fans and badger blenders. We make the badger blenders with 3 rows and 5 rows. Series 96 is the 5 row. Series 99 is the 3 row. The most famous use you can see of the Series 96 brush with the 5 row badger blender or softener is the Gerhard Richter paintings of from the 60s and 70s, the 80s, where you have that soft blur at the kind of where you almost looks like you have to squint your eyes, and the gray paintings of that he's famous for, of airplanes and things, and certainly the famous one of the candle that a lot of people know my age from the cover of the Sonic Youth Daydream Nation album. And you'll look at the candle and has this soft focus, and he used the Da Vinci Badger blenders for this kind of effect. So we do sell a lot of these brushes. It comes from 40 millimeters up to 120 millimeters wide, and we just made some custom size 200 millimeter ones for an artist that wanted one. And so we do crazy things like that. We have another crazy brush you and I have discussed called the
Yeah.
Quattro. And the
Hmm.
Quattro is a bristle brush, and we'll maybe put a slide up of it. It's
Yeah,
got
it's crazy. Hmm.
four brush heads. And that was an Scandinavian artist, and he sent Mr. Defet a sketch of this brush he wanted so he could put 4 different colors of paint on each brush head. I think it was red, yellow, orange, and white. And he was painting giant burning suns. So we put we made him 2 sizes, actually, 60 millimeters and 100 millimeters. And he was doing this big twisting motion with them, doing these huge canvases of burning sun. So we made him a custom brush where we just made him 3 or 4. And then we decided, well, usually when we do that, we just put it in the catalog and make it available to everybody. So
Hmm.
it just shows like we're really going for quality over quantity, and we really want to make things that unique for artists. And this is also kind of the fun part of the job too. It's kind of a fun challenge to see if we can manufacture these things, that artists want. I mean, in the motlers, we used to make them up to 200 mil, and then artists said, "Oh, I want a bigger one, and I want a bigger one." And now we're making them up 300 mil, 400 millimeters, 500 millimeters. So 12, 16, and 20 inches. And we also make the badgers and mottlers. It's the badger hair. All natural hair starts thicker at the root and then gets thinner at the tip. So badger hair is completely different. It's thinner at the root and gets thicker at the tip. So it has a whole different effect for oil painting and blending, softening. Even if you take the mottler and you're just doing background paintings, it gives it a little different look than if you're
Hmm.
doing it with hog bristle. So yeah, we have a huge range of natural hair brushes. I don't think I've covered them all. We also make one called a smooth oil blender, which is Filbert in Series 1833. It combines Kolinsky sable, squirrel hair, and black sable, and that's if you just want to smooth out everything. And that again came from an artist's request who just wanted to be able to smooth out and blend out everything. So that's the fun part of the job, is making these unique and kind of crazy brushes for artists. And I know that I enjoy the experience when that happens, and I know that everybody at Da Vinci kind of enjoys the challenge. We can't always do it. We get a lot of requests from people every year saying, "Can I send you some of my hair, and can you make a brush for me?" No, 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 no. We're not going to do that. That's we've tried it once or twice, but that's something we don't do. Just FYI. So
Hmm.
so yes, so that's our line of natural oil painting brushes. And Da Vinci, like I said, they just launched a new website, davinci-defet.com, DEFET. I have the new print catalog. There's also a Da Vinci phone app, so you can download it, on your phone, and it has all the brushes on it and the measurements, short video. So if you're interested in these hog brushes I've talked about, or the ox hair brushes, black sable, you can go, put in, you can go to a store and scan it. You can put in black sable. The filbert is series 1845. You could just put in 1845. The brush comes up on the app, and you have a short video how to use it. You've got the measurements, you've got pictures. They've done an incredible job. And it's really great in the stores for the employees who work there, because it's a way for them to kind of get their own quick. Customer asks a question about a brush, they can check it, they can say, oh, how wide is this brush? The measurements are there. um, so they can really get into either the basics or the minutia
Mm.
about the brush. um, and that goes for artists, people that work in art material stores. um, Oftentimes, students who are going into art college these days, not as many art colleges teach the foundation class anymore, which is where you learn about the materials. You learn about how brushes are made, or oil paints made, or watercolor brushes, how it all works together. I have a great old friend in LA named Steve Satzik, and he's taught this class for years at Art Center at Pasadena, and using our brushes. And he's a wonderful guy. And his wife, Ann Satzik, is also an oil painting instructor at Art Center in Pasadena. And so a lot of times the students go in, and they don't have this kind of foundation education that all art schools used to require. So
Mhm.
they kind of have to go out on their own to kind of learn about the materials. And the materials can be daunting. Certainly what's happened with the internet the last decade especially, is all these artists making videos about how to use our brushes has been wonderful, because I think a lot of people would go into an art supply store and they'd see a quill brush, or they'd see maybe an expensive Kolinsky sable brush or a black sable brush. And maybe, especially the quill brushes, could be very intimidating. But now, I mean, with all of the online videos, the urban sketchers, watercolorists, flower painters, how to use these quill brushes, and the people see what can be done with them. Well, now it's not as intimidating anymore. And so that's been the wonderful thing about, especially like BoldBrush sponsoring all these artists, all these videos about how artists are using paint and brushes. I mean, it's a wonderful wealth of uh, information BoldBrush has created, so that they can see how the materials are used, and kind of get a short education, watch a 1 minute video or a 2 minute video, or if they want to go in deep, they can find that too. And if they love the work of a painter in particular, and they want to emulate the work of that painter, they can see the materials they're using. So I think all this is
Mhm.
great. And we've had a whole revival in sign painting. Last 10 years, we have a huge range of sign painting and lettering brushes. They weren't selling very much, but now with the internet, um, you know, gilding, sign painting, lettering, all of these specialty brushes we make there's a great demand for them now. And that's wonderful, because, we didn't stop making them because there wasn't that much demand for, maybe 20 years ago. We didn't discontinue them because we didn't look at the spreadsheet and say, oh, we haven't sold 300 of these this year. It's
Yeah.
just not the way we think. It's a little bit about, it's a bit like AT&T owning Warner Brothers. You kind of have accountants running film studios, and that can apply to art supply companies as well, that have been bought. And then you have 20 brands under one corporate umbrella. It's a lot of brands to manage for anybody.
Yeah.
So that's another way we're different, and I think how we try to stand out from others.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I think the other really cool thing about Da Vinci is specifically what you had mentioned earlier, that you guys have very unique synthetic brushes that try and really accomplish to imitate the same effects that you can get with, with natural brushes, for people who maybe don't feel comfortable using natural brushes or actually prefer the texture. So do you mind telling us a little bit about some of the synthetic brushes?
Yeah, and we've really worked on the synthetic brushes, like I said, for the last 50 years, of making great synthetic brushes and different and unique ones. And because we do have a large group of people who want vegan brushes. So we have a whole, you know, complete vegan brush line as well, you know, both in short handle and long handle brushes. And then the oil brushes, and, you know, I'll include acrylic ones in here in particular. Um, the, uh, the main oil brush that we designed is the Grigio. And this brush really has the feel, it almost has a feel like a synthetic black sable, which is our natural hairbrush I talked about earlier, um, kind of with a synthetic hog bristle, but more towards the black sable. And you know, this brush comes in round and bright and filbert and fans, and we also make a long mottler that seems to be very well received for background painting and underpainting and these kind of things. Um, so again, this is you know, like 5 diameters synthetic. It's a crimped fiber which we developed. So it just holds and releases paint differently, and I think it's a better brush than other brands' synthetic mongoose brushes, and it's completely different. And I really encourage. We have sets in this brush. You know, I've from just visiting artist studios for so long since I was a teenager. You know, I always ask artists like, what shapes do you use? And the answers are so different. I only use filberts. I use rounds and filberts. I only use you know, brights and flats, or you know, you get every kind of combination of the two. So with all of our with Grigio, you know, I thought, well, uh, I'll make a set. So we have sets that are just rounds, just brights. We have just a filbert set, and then you can get a set that's got all the shapes. You know, so you get kind of a potpourri of the different shapes. Why I use the word potpourri, I have no idea. But anyways, you get the picture. So, you know, this was designed with artists in mind, because, you know, there are some artists who, they don't want to buy a set because they don't want the flat, maybe they don't want the round, they just want the filberts. So I kind of did that across all the oil painting lines. Um, but the Grigio, the stroke it delivers is really different from any other synthetic brush, and I encourage you to try it. We have a nice literature pamphlet on it as well, and you know, there's plenty of information on the Da Vinci website. And I think this is really going to be the most popular synthetic oil painting brush for us. It is now, but going out as more and more oil painters try it, because we've just gotten a great reaction to it all over the world with this crimped fiber. Um, so we have a new line of synthetic hog bristle brushes, um, and it's called the Chineo, and these are new. And it's another way of kind of, if you don't want to use natural hog bristle brushes, this is a synthetic hog bristle brush line that we've made to emulate the feel of hog bristle. So it's called the Chineo, Chuneo, and it's just getting out there into the stores. It's very affordable, and so far we've had a great reaction to it. And one of the things, especially, of course, we make the classic sizes, you know, the round, the flat, but we also make it in a mottler, again, so you can paint your backgrounds, you can cover large areas of work, and that comes from 20 millimeters up to 120 millimeters. So up to about, you know, 3/4 of an inch, up to about 5 inches of width. So check that one out. The mottler especially is series 2429, and so far that's been very popular with oil painters looking for a synthetic hog bristle brush. So that's it. That's the Chineo. And you know, we also make the Topacryl brush, which we talked about, as a 5 diameter synthetic brush. That's our overall bestseller because we've been selling it in the United States for a long time. And it also comes in huge sizes for people that want to, you know, if you're buying bigger canvases, this is a great brush you can use to kind of cover all that canvas. You know, bigger canvas is much less expensive than it used to be, so it's a great brush for that. And then we also make the green handle, the Nova, the golden synthetic, which was our first synthetic brush, and it's the most affordable. We make in the artist range, we make a student oil painting and acrylic painting brush called the college brush. That's our least expensive one, if you'd like to try that one. And we then make a very kind of crazy brush called the Impasto, the impasto is nothing but the thickest fibers, and it has a feeling like a painting knife. So a lot of people call it the flexible painting knife brush because if you push it against the canvas or a panel, it has kind of the same resistance feeling as a painter's knife, and that's called the impasto. And we also made that brush for people who, if you grew up working in an art supply store, you always have these painters coming in saying, "I'm so hard on my brushes. I thrash all my brushes. I destroy all my brushes." And well, here's the impasto. This is going to be the most difficult one for you to destroy. And we also make a super stiff mottler version of it. And we'll put up a picture of a mottler so everybody knows what I'm talking about.
Mhm.
Um, and we also make a long flat handled mottler called a spalter. That's just a technical term in many of in hog bristle. So it's a huge range for oil painters, both in natural hair and synthetic, and then a lot of specialty brushes as well. And again, we make a huge range of brush sets. Sometimes when you buy a brush set from a store or online, you do save a little bit of money than if you bought the brushes individually. That's kind of the idea of a set. It's a little bit of a deal. And like I said, we do generally make a sampler set where you get all the different shapes. And then I've designed these specialized sets for painters where you get, if you just use rounds, there's just rounds, just brights, or just filberts, or just flats. So you can look out for those as well. And the next thing we have on the horizon is we're making some custom sets for BoldBrush. So these will be ready soon. They'll be available soon. And when these come out, I hope you all hear about it. I'm certainly BoldBrush will make the link available where they're being sold. But yeah, this is exciting. This is a collaboration with BoldBrush that we've been working on. It hasn't been a fly-by-night thing. We've been working on it for quite some time, and it's almost ready. So those will be available soon. And we're going to start with brushes for oil painters, and then we'll kind of expand it out to other ranges as well. So we're super excited about that. That's going to be great.
Yes, and once we do have that link, I will include it in the show notes, and I will also, make an extra announcement when it is ready. If this episode comes out and then the brushes aren't ready in the future episode, just add it in as an announcement. Um, but yes, what are some links where people can go check out more stuff?
Well, I mean, like I said, there's the main Da Vinci site, which I would recommend that one as the main place because they've just redone the site. And that's Da Vinci Defet, DEFET.com. There's also Instagram. We have Instagram Da Vinci Official. We have
Mhm.
Instagram Da Vinci North America, which is my Instagram site. And if artists want to show work on that, they can send us their work. Other places, I mean, as far as buying the Da Vinci brushes in North America, US or Canada, I mean, I always recommend your local art supply store, and because that's the lifeblood of the art supply industry, or the independent art supply dealers. We don't sell to chain stores, so we don't sell to Michael's or Hobby Lobby or these types of big craft chains. It's just not who we are. And they're generally selling brushes that are $3.99, $5.99, $7.99, so less expensive brushes. We have brushes in those price ranges, but that's just not really our primary focus. And without going into online dealers, because we have a lot of online dealers, so
Mm.
I don't want to really put a preference one over the other.
Yeah.
There, you can find all of our brushes online in many different places. And if you're having trouble with that, again, just email me at greg@gregdaniels.com. And I know where all the brushes are, where all the local dealers are. I'm the sole source for North America for Da Vinci brushes. So I'm happy to help you and find you the brush you need or send you a catalog.
Yes, definitely the catalog. I want the catalog actually.
A beautiful catalog.
Oh
And
yeah.
people are artists. Well, I think it's 6 months old, and artists have been just thrilled that we have a print catalog with
Hmm.
big, bold pictures and all this information. I do want to make one last point on a
Yeah.
personal note. Um, I'm married to an oil painter,
Oh.
so I'm living with lots of oil paint around, and lots of brushes. And my wife Olivia's favorite brush is the Da Vinci Series 5423. So that is the Maestro 2 Hog Bristle Filbert. So if you want to give that one a try, she loves it.
Well, thank you
Yeah.
so much for telling us all about the oil painting brushes. We will also be having an episode very shortly on the watercolor brushes because I know we have a lot of watercolorists who are part of the BoldBrush group. So stay tuned for that, guys. And thank you so much, Greg.
Thank you very
Perfect.
much.
Thank you. We here at BoldBrush want to extend our sincerest gratitude to Gregory Daniels as well as the team at Da Vinci for all of their hard work in making this collaboration possible. I personally also want to thank Michael Olson for providing me with all of the footage of the Da Vinci factory as well as all the brush demos. If you're listening to this episode, I highly recommend visiting boldbrushshow.com to watch the video version of the episode. You'll be able to visually see what the Da Vinci factory is like, see the wonderful artisans and makers of the brushes, and also the demonstrations of the specific brushes we mentioned. Again, to watch the video version of this episode, just visit boldbrushshow.com. And of course, the site where you can purchase the Da Vinci and Bold Brush paint sets is live. Just visit brushoffer.com/collections/boldbrush and you'll find them there. We also have a special discount code to get an extra 10% off the already special pricing at checkout. Just use the code BoldBrush. Your order supports our community efforts at BoldBrush and FASO.